microphone. This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the wedge neighborhood right now.
Okay, welcome to another episode of the Wedge Live podcast. This is the giant microphone edition of the Wedge Live podcast. I'm joined today. Are you going to help me with your name?
Yes.
I was very confident coming in. I thought I knew, but then people are teasing me on Twitter that I'm not going to know, and now I think maybe I don't know.
It sounds like people have been setting you up for failure, is how I feel.
Should I try?
You were given several options and all of them were wrong. So I can't see how you could have gotten a pathway to success out of.
Because I thought it was Lisa with an R. I thought it was Lisa with an R.
Yeah.
I really did. That's how I've been saying it.
Hello, Wedge Live podcast. My name is Risa Hustad.
That's what I wanted. Is that not right?
That's correct.
Oh, that's correct.
Yeah.
There was nothing intimidating about that at all. Okay. And you're a candidate for a park board in District 6.
Correct.
Okay. Well, we're off and rolling. I didn't bring a co-host today. So
I'm not going to get it from all sides today.
No, we're not going to have that third voice to like penetrate the awkward silence. But you should feel intimidated because I felt so confident coming into this that I didn't bring a buddy. Like, what have I got in store? Why do I feel so confident today?
I'm sure you've got something up your sleeve.
You said you grew up in East Isles. Are we talking about the Tuthill era? Were you ever represented by Meg Tuthill?
That's a good question. I am unsure whether I was ever represented by Meg Tuthill as a constituent, but I spent a lot of time in her balloon shop. So okay. I do feel a little bit of endearment to the Tuthill brand, though I, at the same time, know her to be the kind of person who would do something like prevent people from using a park because they were brown. But the balloons were really neat.
And we still have a balloon shop. I know people still refer to it as Tuthill's Balloon Shop.
I mean, I still think of the Chipotle as an Embers, so I can't hardly blame them.
I have no frame of reference for that. I know Lake Chipotle, which could potentially be, the park board should invest in that.
Yes.
It's a beloved area lake.
Before Lake Chipotle was dredged, we used to have an Embers in Uptown.
What is Embers?
Embers was an important staple of the family restaurant chain.
Okay.
It's like B-level dinner food.
I mean, I guess I can't call it Uptown, but we could use one of those.
Well, now we have the Uptown Diner, which, despite having diner in its name, and it does serve breakfast all day, it also serves all the other kinds of things. So, like, the niche is filled, just not with an Embers any longer. And, of course, the Uptown Diner used to be a Burger King.
Okay, I've heard that.
We've been upgrading on that corner, is what I'm saying.
You make a lot of references to the Burger King. At least I saw one yesterday on Twitter about like judging people's ages by which Burger King they remember, something like that. Maybe you could repeat it.
Minneapolis used to be Burger King rich. And there was an era, a bygone era, where both Nicollet and 34th had a Burger King next to the Y. And Uptown had a Burger King, and those two locations ceased to exist. And I feel like it's fair to judge people's age based on whether they remember one of those two Burger Kings disappearing.
You can also judge when they moved to Minneapolis. I can only remember the Nicollet Burger King, so I'm either young or recent.
Yeah, what is your I moved to Minneapolis age?
2012 is when I moved here.
Okay. So what happened in 2012? What happened in that era?
So that's the era of Lisa Bender getting elected to the city council. She was elected in 2013.
Mm.
I remember meeting Meg Tuthill in the lobby of my building, and she complimented my Nice Ride shirt. She was in campaign mode, trying to convince me that she loves bikes, and she's like, "I love Nice Ride."
How'd that go over?
I mean, I had no awareness of Meg Tuthill, and like going into that election, I knew enough to know that I preferred Lisa Bender, but like I didn't have hard feelings towards Meg Tuthill. I didn't feel like a whole lot was at stake. Turns out a lot was at stake that I didn't realize at that point.
Yeah, I think I hear that from a lot of people that they don't recognize like the degree um, of like how important a certain kind of election is, or like how dissimilar a pair of people who are trying to ask for your vote to represent you are. And they see that in hindsight. I was just
We're all
talking,
Democrats here in Minneapolis.
and that means so little when you're talking about the difference between somebody who wants to connect bike networks and work through an equity lens, or somebody like Meg Tuthill who wants to run a balloon shop and keep people out of parks.
Local issues are so different from national issues. You really have no frame of reference for what someone's going to do on local issues just because they endorsed Joe Biden or they endorsed Bernie Sanders. So let's talk about the park board. It doesn't get a lot of attention. I don't spend as much time watching it as I should. I don't have time for it. I'm mostly focused on the city council. So you are here to tell us why we should care about the park board as our first guest who's running for park board.
Yeah, so the park board does, I think, a lot more than people realize. And they're doing a lot of good right now. And if they stopped doing the amount of good they're doing, we would know. There are a lot of things that the park board does that I think, like, as just like normal residents of Minneapolis, you don't really recognize as like, oh, the park board manages that, or the park board is in charge of this thing. Like, think, for example, like tree canopy. Like, if you look down a street and you see that there's a canopy of trees over the street, the canopy of trees is doing things like capturing carbon and keeping the street and the houses and homes on the street at a lower temperature than if there were no trees. The park board, through their forestry department, manages all of that. Like, every tree you see on public right-of-way, the park board put there.
So, little behind the scenes, I know how hard you're working because when I tried to schedule you for this, I tried to schedule at like 6 p.m. You're like, no, I'm not available at any point on 6 p.m. any day. It must be 3:30. And so that's how I got you on the show. So I know you are working hard to get elected because you're reserving every evening trying to get elected.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, 5 to 8 p.m., you can catch me in my cave making those calls.
Leaving voicemails, right?
Yes. Please don't pick up. My voicemail is so good. I will leave you such a good voicemail message. You can call me back after dinner.
So you prefer leaving the voicemail?
I feel like 5 to 8 is a good period to call people because people prefer to get phone calls at that time. With that being said, y'all, I do not want to ruin your dinner time. So many people pick up and they're not in a position where they want to talk, and they're like upset because they feel bad. They're like, I can't talk right now. And I'm like, that's totally fine. You can
just let me call back and I'll leave a voicemail.
Yes. You don't have to speak to me while you're putting your toddler in bed. I don't want to speak to you when you're putting your toddler in bed.
Why did they pick up?
I want you to finish what you were doing. And then I want you to listen to my voicemail and choose whether to call me back or not. You can send me a text message. You can go to my website. You can send me a message on Instagram. You can get after me on Twitter. You can do all of those things. You do not need to pick up during dinner. You don't need to pick up during your kid's bedtime.
And yet you continue to call. You must think it's effective, right?
I mean, I do think that even though it's annoying to get phone calls from numbers that you don't recognize, I think that once you have somebody on a phone, there's a more personal connection with that person than just like getting an email blast or getting a postcard in the mail. Like, I do genuinely care about what people think. I want to know that, you know, I want to know what that person's priorities are, and I want to know that they understand my priorities, and I want to know that our priorities align. Like, I'm a principled person, and I'm not here to call people to tell them, I'm the best person and you should vote for me, because obviously, I want to get to know people, and phone calls are actually a long forgotten but decent way of doing that. A lot of people still aren't comfortable being like out in parks in like face-to-face meet and greets, and being on the phone with people is the next best thing, so to speak.
You know how I know you're principled and you believe in things? We once stood in front of a truck together. We made the cover of the Southwest Journal standing in front of a giant truck.
The Southwest Journal, may she rest in peace.
Right. Although I kind of covered you up. Couldn't see you behind my giant body.
Yes, 2 hashtags were born on that day. The hashtag Fix Lindale and the hashtag Ban Tall People.
Oh, really?
I will admit, the tall people are inconvenient in a lot of ways.
Obscuring your glory.
But no, I mean, that was genuinely type 2 fun, and I would do it again tomorrow. Even though you couldn't see me behind you and Ward, both tall people.
So I watch the park board enough to know that it's potentially a very miserable experience for you. And so why do you want the job?
These are good questions. So, real quick, my background, the things that I do for fun are similar to you, sitting and watching public meetings and racing bicycles long distances, often without enough food or water, without any breaks. And I gotta say, I think that sitting through a park board meeting where people are screaming at each other and careers, so-called, are on the line, I think that could be in the running for more miserable than my longest, hardest bike race. But I think I'm more or less up to the task of listening to folks that have a bone to pick, or listening to folks that go ahead.
Are you pledging to bring the park board together? Because you're going to fail if that's your pledge.
I would rather under promise and over deliver.
Okay. Sounded like a pledge to bring the park board together.
I mean, the bar is pretty low right now, if we're being honest. There are some personalities on the park board right now that are on the board for their pride, for their desire to climb a ladder, and those things are good to have in isolation, but they don't serve the people of Minneapolis. They don't serve your constituents. And like I said, the bar is pretty low right now. Every person that's on the board right now, I think, is a good person who is on the board for the right reasons. But there's a toxic culture on the park board right now that we can't ignore. It's got to be mended for the park board to keep doing good work.
So I'm obligated to ask you, prove to us you're not a malignant personality.
Gosh, what would it look like to not be a malignant personality?
I mean, the question is to you. It's mostly a joke question. So.
I think, yeah, no, I'm thinking about it. Like I'm thinking, I think like knowing the degree of um, toxic culture that has been on the park board over the last year, I don't think anybody but a masochist would like step in to the ring, um, knowing full well like how much work there is to be done just to shift that culture. If I wanted to bother people, if what I wanted out of life um, was to like upset other people in my city or get under people's skin. I do that already on Twitter. Come at me.
Mhm. Okay. Because my long running joke is like it's not a full time job. You're not making a lot of money. It's not a lot of attention. I don't really see it as much of a stepping stone or a ladder to climb. So it draws you either care a whole lot about the city and the parks, or you're running to like do fist fights every couple of weeks for 8 hours at a time. You either enjoy the fighting and the maneuvering and the backstabbing and the cruelty, or or you want to do good in the world.
Why not both?
So I believe you're the kind of person who's trying to do good in the world. So I
I
will
maybe
vouch
I
for
like the
you.
backstabbing too. Maybe I
Okay. You gotta be tough. You gotta be tough to do good in the world.
No, but you're right. I mean, I don't think that we have to choose between those two things all the time. Like I don't think that you have to choose between being principled and caring about the right things, um, and being able to like operate and coordinate with other people that like you sometimes might disagree with. Like those two things should not be in contest.
I'm mostly talking about the stuff that doesn't make sense. Like, why did that person do that? That's not accomplishing what I think they're trying to
Yeah.
accomplish. There's
I
a lot
think
of pointless meanness.
I think we oftentimes, and this goes for, other tiers of local government, I am oftentimes scratching my head, um, asking myself, why did that person in the public eye, why did that person do that? And oftentimes I find myself realizing I'm thinking about it too hard. I'm thinking about it harder than that person is. You know,
Yeah.
I am looking for a strategy here, and there just isn't one. This person might represent this whole district or this whole ward or this whole city, but they did that for themselves. And I sometimes I just have to remind myself, like, you know, no person is a problem to solve, and elected people are no different.
Who's the meanest member of the park board? Name names.
Oh gosh, um, I will not be doing that.
Okay.
Soon
That's
to be
okay.
named Risa Hustad, the meanest member of the board.
Right. Yeah. That's actually
I do
possible.
terrible things. Sometimes I come to four-way stops on my bicycle, and I just look at other people straight in the eye and I say, "I'm going to ride my bicycle through this four-way stop." I am so mean that I don't even wait for other people to play the wave game through the four-way
Hmm.
stop. I just take the opportunity to roll straight through the four-way stop after coming to a complete stop.
You're a militant member of the bike lobby.
I Well, I actually have gotten significant campaign donations from the all-powerful bicycle lobby. That's why we've been so successful up to this point.
So let's talk about issues. I've read some things from your website. Maybe we should start there because I want to know what they mean. I think they're interesting. So I'm going to read some
Hmm.
quotes.
You're reading quotes from the website risaforparks.com.
RisaForParks.com,
That is
definitely.
four, spelled FOR, not for the number,
Yeah.
because I'm maybe a 90s baby, but I
And
spell
if
words.
and if yeah, I am kind of annoyed by the four. Although it can help if you're running for city council and you put in the four spelled out and then ward, it looks like forward,
Oh, look at
which
you.
I don't know if I like that or not. A lot of people do that.
I'm going to have to sit on that one.
Let's get to your website. Risa for Parks. What is it again?
RISA FORPARKS.com.
Okay, you're not an org.
No, sir.
Okay, interesting choice. Here's from Risa's website. I will also challenge our system to understand complexity and nuance and make decisions that center equity, even when that means we turn down opportunities that would help the parks but harm Minneapolis residents. So give me an example of something that would help the parks but harm Minneapolis residents, and you'd possibly have to reject that.
Oh man, you did not start with an easy one, did you?
I mean, I really want to know what that means.
Yeah. So I'm doing my best to be upfront there, but I am trying to name an elephant in the room without calling it out explicitly, because I realize there's some real wonk in here. I'm just going to break it down for you very quickly. So you understand that we're in a housing crisis.
Yeah.
And you understand that the way out of the housing crisis is more housing.
Correct.
You understand that there is a limited amount of land in this city.
Yes.
And the park board maintains over 15% of the acreage in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And you understand how important it is that every person in the city can access parks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like we all have a park within spitting distance of where we call home. And you understand that if the park board got, say, a donation of land, that might mean more parks for somebody.
Right.
So if somebody came to you and was like, hey, I don't think there's enough green space in my neighborhood, I'm going to donate this parcel of land to the park board. That would feel like a good thing, because that maybe means more parks, and parks are good. So more parkland is good. So
Mhm.
let me enter into the scenario something a little bit darker, and that is this scenario where a person purchases land and intends to develop it for housing. But once they purchase the land and they get a project squared away, and they decide this project would be like this project would be better off if, instead of 3 buildings with housing in them, instead of those 3 buildings, I'm going to make 2 buildings, and I'm going to put a green space in between them. The units will go for a higher dollar value because people like living next to green space, and that will be more money in my pocket. The only problem is I'm going to be footing the bill for that like third parcel of land. Well, here's what I'm going to do instead. I'm going to give it to the city. I'm going to give it to the park board to maintain. So the city is not able to make an income on the land tax on that piece of property, and it doesn't become that third piece of housing. So in that scenario, you have this thing that sounds good on its surface, but that could equal a third less units being built on parcels that are designed for housing. And again, I know
Okay.
that's like high level wonk, but I do want to keep an eye out for things that look very nice on their surface and still could be bad choices for folks. I don't want to name names. I don't want to name parks. I don't want to ruin nice green spaces that we already have for people. But like, that is something that the park board has done in their history. Accepted basically donations of land from developers that should be housing.
Here's another quote. Right now, several of our parks facilities are only accessible by able-bodied adults in personal motor vehicles. And I can't think of what those parks would be.
Yeah, and I think you're
Or
very
park
lucky
facilities.
in the wedge, right? Where like to you, the closest park is probably Mueller, right? Or maybe Whittier.
Correct. Yeah.
I think that both of those parks are easy to get to by walking to them. There are parks that, like, for example, like Martin Luther King Park in Kingfield, that park has a very nice asphalt path that goes through it. But the path itself, you can't get to, you cannot access from the street. If you're a person who's like using a mobility device or pushing a stroller, like you will have to like figure out a way to take a million detours to get into that trail, because there's not a curb cut or a ramp at the appropriate place for a person to get to the trail itself. And like these are simple, like right now changes that we can make to park infrastructure to make them easier to get to for everybody and more pleasant to get to.
Okay, so next quote from your website. I will work to reduce unnecessary runoff into the lakes caused by a lack of space between our parkways and the water line.
Yeah, so two things going on there. So one, buffer space to filter toxins out before toxins make it into the lakes and creek. And another thing is adding infrastructure to filter unnecessary trash, garbage, etc., that would otherwise make it into the lakes. So one of those things looks like, putting up concrete or other kinds of like physical barriers, like man-made filters between, what is effectively just like a sewage line between every street in Minneapolis and the water. And another thing, the other one, so like a natural buffer looks like planting native plants, planting different kinds of plants in between, where water collects and where water flows into the lakes and the creek.
Are we going to talk about cars? Because a lot of those
Ooh.
particles are coming from cars.
Don't tempt me with a good time. You know I want to talk about cars on the Parkway.
It's a hot button. I feel like there's been a lot of consternation, a lot of yard signs inspired by talk about how many cars should we have on the parkways? Should we divert cars off the parkways? Will cars be allowed on the parkways? Do you have positions on those hot button topics?
Yeah, I mean, of course we know that cars add different kinds of toxins on so many levels. Anytime you have a car, I don't care if it's gas powered or electric, like you're leaving things like microplastics around. Like if you're driving, you're leaving trash on the parkway, trash that is so small there's no way to catch it. That just is what it is. Anytime you're driving a car around the parkways or any street, you do run the risk of harming another person. Like if you don't see a pedestrian trying to cross the parkway to get to, like the water's edge, for example, and you hit them with your car, like you are going to hurt them. There are a lot of reasons why cars are doing bad things to the local environment. There are a lot of reasons to limit how much nastiness is released when combustion engines work. That's just like a natural consequence of the thing that Henry Ford made for us. And I think it's important to discuss lots of different kinds of options for reducing the number of cars that are on the parkways themselves. With that being said, I think each parkway is pretty different. There are a lot of parkways where, local residents and people all around the city will tell you, like, yes, I would love to just be able to ride a bike without there being a car on the parkway. I would love to be able to skateboard down that parkway without people driving down the parkway. I would love to just like do that thing now, and I don't see a reason not to. And then there are a lot of other situations like sections of Minnehaha and even sections of Bede-Makaska where that portion of the parkway is also the only way to get motor vehicles to a residence. So it's really dependent on the section of roadway that we're talking about, when it comes to like, do we make sure that people can for sure drive here? and how frequently should people drive here. I'm right now, I'm like open to all options. I think we have a lot of good things going for us right now in terms of, like we're having lots of conversations about, do we open parkways to people on certain days of the week? Do we open parkways to people at certain parts of the year? How do we do that? How do we fund that? Um, and I think overwhelmingly people are really excited to have some portions of street that are near the lakes or near the creek that are accessible to everybody who wants to walk or roll on them.
So one of the things about 2020 and cars on parkways that I realized that I didn't know before was how quiet the parks are. Like beyond the transportation considerations of, hey, I'd like to walk or bike on this and not have cars speeding past. Or this is really bad for the lakes, the pollution aspect. There's just like being in the park and enjoying the silence. You can hear the birds, you can hear other people, like that aspect of what cars do to our parks when we have so many of them circling around the parks constantly, I think is underestimated. That's what I
Yeah.
learned in 2020.
Yeah. There's a lot more to be appreciated when you aren't start hearing the constant hum of vehicles. I 100% agree.
Okay, let's talk about encampments, unsheltered people in the parks. You indicate on your website that you did a lot of work in the parks in 2020.
Yeah, and I just want to say really quickly, I did do a lot of work at the park near my house, Martin Luther King Park, near where I live. But it, it was a huge neighborhood wide effort. A lot of our community members, a lot of people in the neighborhood were really committed to uh, checking in with the folks that were taking shelter in MLK Park this last summer and asking how to support them, asking what we could do to help them, asking just generally like, what is it you need right now? What is it you need in a month? What is it that you want by next year? So I don't want to make it sound like, you know, I selflessly, single-handedly
I wasn't
did
trying to
all of
build
this
you up
great
that high.
stuff.
Okay. We can take you
It was
down a
just,
peg.
yeah, take me down several pegs. I need to get used to being taken down several pegs. That's part of being a commissioner, I think.
Yeah. So talk about how the park board handled that over the last year,
Mm.
and maybe things you would change, things you would do differently.
Yeah, I think that the park board was offered this impossible problem, which was, we are a body that the thing that we do is we identify what kinds of uses people can participate in parks, and then we make a process for them to do that thing. And so this last summer, folks realized that, people were taking shelter in the parks not in groups of one or two, but there were areas across the city where there were between 5 and 255 people in one place. And that was different than it had been in years past. And so the park board, made a decision. And I think that, hindsight is 2020, but I don't know how many decisions they really had available to them, how many options they really had available to them. They made a decision to make a permitting process because, if you're the park board and what you mostly do is permit weddings and permit events at your parks, I guess that felt like the thing that they needed to do at that time. They made a permitting process for, if you're a group of people who are taking shelter in this park, fill out this permit, sign your name on this line, renew every 2 weeks. And I mean, there's no way to say that that was a good thing. I think, as a housed neighbor, um, being presented with that permit uh, originally, excuse me, um, I looked at that permit and I was like, none of us could like take the responsibility to like sign a permit to be, um, to be like the caretaker of a bunch of other adults. I don't want to do it. None of my house neighbors want to do that. None of the people taking shelter in this park want to participate in a permit to say I'm responsible for 5 to 25 other people. And anything they do in this space is my like personal and financial responsibility. Like that was offering some folks like kind of an impossible scenario. Um, but that was the tool that the park board had available to them, and so that's what they gave us. And I think folks like more or less worked with it. Something that was tough this last summer with COVID was um, normal park amenities were not open, and I think that there was a really good argument to have more amenities available to folks taking shelter in parks, especially because a lot of people who take shelter outside normally use public utilities, use things like libraries and park buildings and gas stations. And those were just things that were not open in 2020. So I think there was a really good argument to have things like fresh running water, people being able to access shower buildings and restrooms and other like hygiene needs that every person has those needs. Um, and I think it was pretty disappointing that those like little things weren't made available to people. With that being said, though, I was really impressed by how hard some of the park's staff were working to connect with people that were taking shelter in the parks, to you know identify like, hey, what kind of supports do you need? Like, we're not allowed to let you in the building because someone says so, but like we are going to get you a second porta potty because you asked for one. We are going to get you a hand washing station because somebody asked for one. It turns out 25 people who live full time in a park, produce more waste, more garbage than people just like walking through the park throwing away their dog poop. So the park staff was like, "Oh, well, you we normally pick up the trash once a week here, but now we're going to pick it up every day because that's the right thing to do. They're just filling the trash bins more often, so we're just gonna roll with the punches here." Um, so that was last summer. That was exceptional, for a lot of reasons, because last summer was exceptional. With that being said, people have been taking shelter in parks for as long as I've been living in Minneapolis, and that's my whole life. I think that going forward, we as a board, we need to identify that like that is a use of the parks. People do that. People take shelter in parks. People, um, people who come from homes where they don't feel comfortable all the time. Those people go to parks to feel safe, and um, people like sleep in parks overnight. People do those things, and we have to be willing and ready and give our staff the tools to be willing and ready to perform dignified outreach for those folks.
And the lack of facilities, bathroom facilities, I don't know, having a water fountain that functions, that's just like, that's a problem for everyone,
Right.
just being out in the world.
I think the thing that was tough about last summer was there were so many things that were bad for everybody, and they were just the worst for the most vulnerable people.
Yeah.
It sucks for you and I to not be able to um, use a drinking fountain if we're like outside doing our thing. Um, it just sucks extra hard for people for whom like that is the only way that they're getting drinking water.
Right. Let's talk about leadership experience. What have you done, Risa, to show that you have the leadership qualities to get elected to park board and implement your priorities?
That's such a silly question. Being a good commissioner isn't being a boss, it's being a listener. I don't need to have ever been anybody's boss
I don't
to
mean
be
being
good at
somebody's boss.
hearing
I
what
mean
they
like
need.
out there doing good in the world, you know? There's all kinds of leaders. I'm not trying to ask a gotcha question.
No, I get you. I just yeah, I mean, I I I I guess one of my greater flaws is I guess I do good things because I've never considered the alternative. And the things that I've done where people have followed me, um I never did because I wanted a group of people that were,
Yeah.
listening to my beck and call. I just do good, and people see that and they think, "Oh, Risa's standing in front of that giant truck."
Yeah, you led me out into traffic in front of a truck.
Maybe I, John Edwards, I should also stand in front of that giant truck.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, maybe I'm too modest. I don't know. I I there are a lot of times where I've started a project and midway through I'm like, this project doesn't need me, Risa, a person who can do all the homework and show up to all the meetings, um, doing this work alone. Like, this needs a coalition of people. And normally, by the time I realize that, I've already accidentally got a crew of people who are doing the work with me. I don't know if that's what leadership looks like, but I sure as heck know that leadership feels a lot more like hearing what people have to say and opening yourself up to, you know, what your tribe needs.
I think it's seeing a problem that needs to be fixed and like I don't know, shining a light on it, taking people along with you to fix it. I think the traditional concept of what a leader is maybe needs to be expanded. That was what I was getting at with that question. I think people want to know how capable you are. I can vouch for you. I think I've come to the end. I was debating, do you have to go and like do campaign stuff right now?
I don't think so. I think I mean this is campaign stuff. I'm always doing campaign stuff.
Yeah.
Everything is the work.
Do you want to listen to some voicemails?
Ooh. That sounds
Listener
very,
voicemails?
very boring. Let's do it.
Okay. I'm gonna play this voicemail here.
Do it.
Please leave a message after the tone.
Hi, this is Jen calling from Marcy Homes, longtime listener, medium-time caller. I was wondering if you had an update on the avocado situation at Aldi. Again, I'll take my call off the air. Thank you.
I can't hear anything if you're playing anything.
Well, you can't
Sorry.
hear anything?
I can't.
Oh. Well, that's not going to be any fun. It was a voicemail about avocados at Aldi. I wonder why you can't hear anything. We won't do the voicemails. Or I will include that part of you not hearing the voicemail. That'll be hilarious.
Let it be known that I've only ever bought rice and bean burritos from Aldi. I can't
sell
speak
rice-
to their avocados.
Are they frozen?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I should check those out. So the answer to the avocado question is they're up to 89 cents. And I stopped buying avocados at 59 cents. So I've cut them out of my diet. That's the answer to that question.
A travesty.
So how is the campaign going? Are people going to caucus.dfl.org and signing up to caucus for Risa?
You know, something that is super helpful but also super creepy is I, as a candidate, I get a list of every person who's registered for caucus every day in
There's a
my
lot of data.
inbox.
A lot of
Oh
data
my
out there.
gosh, it's a lot of information. So I can just ask friends, "Hey, are you registered for caucus?" And
Liars.
whew,
So many
whew.
liars.
I don't mean to set you up for failure, guys, but I know I've got receipts. I can check if you are registered for caucus.
Yeah, do not lie to a candidate. They
Oh
know.
my gosh. I will check you. But really, folks are registering quickly. I think we hit the 4,300 mark as of yesterday. Lots of different people are registering to caucus, which is great. Like lots of new people to caucus. And I think a lot of that is the format, but if you're a person in Minneapolis and let's say you have some opinion about how the city should be operated over the next 2 years or 4 years, depending on what's important to you, 15 minutes this month and 15 minutes next month, and you can make a choice about who does or does not get the DFL endorsement.
Yeah.
So
Parks, public safety, streets, transportation, housing. You go to caucus.dfl.org and register to caucus. Make sure you become a delegate because that gives you the real decision-making power on the endorsement. A lot of people are letting this opportunity pass by.
Yeah, everybody should basically be a city and ward delegate this year.
Oh, and let's talk about what District 6 is. How do people know if you're running to represent them? Where is District 6?
So there's a little bit of a weird little gerrymandering line somewhere in Eco, but
It's Echo.
whoa. You heard it here
Did you
first,
just call
folks.
it Eco?
You heard it here first. Well, it's not in my district. They're not my people.
Oh, it's not? Oh. So you're South Uptown and you're not Echo.
Yeah, so basically south of Lake Street and west of 35W is District 6.
Except for Echo.
John, I have to check on something really quick. Could you pause?
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. My dog needs to eat something.
Let's see the dog.
Hi, bud. It's right here. Oh, no. Come here. You can have it. You can take it from my hands so that John can see you. He's really upset because he's only supposed to take a treat when he's sitting. This is working out poorly.
It's gonna be fine. Just let's get some dog footage for the part of the episode where you go feed the dog. It'll look like this is how you feed the dog. That's a beautiful dog. What's the dog's name?
That's Bandit.
Okay, Risa is back from feeding the dog. Is there anything we didn't cover? Any priorities you want to make sure people know that you have before we go?
Good questions. Priorities right now are, getting folks that live in the district signed up to caucus, or just anybody who has thoughts and opinions about how the city should be operated should be signing up to caucus right now. Campaigns are expensive, and I know my campaign needs some donations. I know a lot of other campaigns are in the same boat. I think right now mutual aid is more important than funding campaigns. But if you've got dollars left over after sharing with mutual aid networks, it's very important to share the love a little bit with the folks that are trying to represent you.
And that's risaforparks.com.
Yes. Thank you. And I think last but not least, COVID aside, we're trying to do as many in-person events as we can safely do. I know we're planning on checking in with folks who are having questions about caucusing at the band shell at 1:30 on Saturday, and 1 to 1:30 on Saturday at the bandshell. We're going to do a little bit of like an Earth Day cleanup on Sunday at Painter Park. And we're just going to try to keep rolling with connecting with folks. So if you're a person who can get out and say hi and, tell me what you think about parks and recreation and parkways, I want to hear what you have to say. And, what you have to say is important. I'd love to meet folks.
And one final question. This could be a gotcha question. Basketball.
Uh-oh.
Basketball, full court or half court? It's been a big controversy in the Wedge at Mueller Park. We're going to go back to half court, keep half court, or go to full court. And I think we're going to full court. I need to know where you are on the half court versus full court controversy, just citywide in general.
Defer to the needs of the community every time.
You're not taking a position on full court versus half court?
I mean, I have only heard feedback that is asking for full court. I don't hear people saying, I can't wait for this half court to be put in.
So people complain, and it's always this like coded racist language about, we don't have enough police to do full court. Like, obviously, if we're going to do full court basketball, you need more police.
Yeah.
Or the music will be loud, or it's going to cause a disturbance.
I can't believe we've made it this far without talking about police and parks.
We can do it right now. Police and parks. The park board has a police department. How many officers in the park police?
33.
And how do you feel about that?
I think that the job that the park police does right now, if they were not doing it, would be done by the Minneapolis Police Department. And regardless of the job they're doing now, I think we can all agree that the Minneapolis Police Department performing the tasks that the park police are doing right now is a net bad. That would be very bad for our community. People don't feel comfortable around the Minneapolis Police Department for all the reasons. So I would love to see the park police changed into a different kind of program, like a ranger type program. But we're going to have that conversation as a community as we start discussing what we want public safety to look like over the next year. I think a lot of that is going to be dependent on what we do with the charter amendment, and what those conversations look like afterwards.
Okay, I think we've come to the end of the episode.
Beauty. John, it was a pleasure.
It really was. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for joining us. You can find Risa at risaforparks.com. And I'm going to press stop here.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.